Today's guest on the Let's Talk series is the internationally recognized success and leadership coach hailing from the sun-kissed shores of Australia. He comes armed with a powerful arsenal of academic qualifications in education, psychology, and organizational behavior. This is bolstered by his professional coaching expertise from renowned NLP Mybridge Institute in North Carolina and some of his insightful work on leadership agility at MIT. With a coaching career spanning more than 2 decades, he has honed his skills to be sharper than a razor's edge, molding leaders, teams, and organizations worldwide to empower them with achieving their pinnacle outcomes. His focus is on rituals that define outstanding leadership at the upper echelons of any organization. Beyond his coaching prowess, he's also a registered practitioner of a variety of psychometrics and strength-based industries, providing him with a unique insight into the human psyche and team dynamics. His global footprint spans more than 38 countries in the world, and his achievements have earned him some prestigious accolades, including the Executive Coach of the Year at the Financial and Legal Services and the 2022 Professional Services Award International. Bringing to bear his staggering 25,000 hours of coaching expertise, he works with leaders, teams, and organizations of the highest caliber, guiding them to elevate their success to unprecedented levels. Brace yourself as we enter the wonderful world of Mr. Mick Todd.
Mick, welcome to the podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you on board today. You're actually what I like to term the industry's secret weapon, because when I started my own business, a few people in the industry said to me, "Oh, you have to speak to Mick Todd. Like, you are the mastermind behind some of the leadership practices that's really evolving a lot of the organizations in this region." If I think off the top of my head, who are like the top 3 like interior design practices, you're working with 2 of them, as well as like TP Bennett in the UK. So tell me a little bit about your origin story. How did you get to work with such fantastic organizations? How did you get into leadership development? And you actually span 38 countries now, I understand. So please tell me all about it. Bring me along on that journey of who is Mick Todd.
Well, first of all, great to be talking with you. Great to see this next iteration of your journey as well, or the quest that you're on, as we've spoken about before. Yeah, Mick Todd, it's a great question. It's something that I reflect on with real privilege and humility. I started out a really long time ago as a primary school teacher. Then I was a really young school principal, and then a rugby coach, and all of that was a fantastic iteration. And it got to a point where I had an opportunity to do something that was enormous in the rugby space, and I turned it down. And a lot of people were looking at me saying, "What are you doing?" And I said, I recognized that it wasn't the rugby that mattered to me. It was getting the best out of people. Mm-hmm. And I always laugh a little bit about the industry that we're talking about, the creative industry, where I'm this secret weapon, and I get the same thing in the financial services industry and the legal industry, which is a fantastic recognition, I suppose, for the body of work I've done around building great people and working with great people. And that's the thing that I feel most fortunate about. So that progress was around, I had a core set of skills that I was pointing at, first of all, children through education, and then rugby and really talented rugby players. And I recognized that what I loved was getting the best out of people. So the work that I do in this industry and in all the industries across which I span is very much focused on that, is getting the best out of people. But this industry holds a special place in my heart, because one of the organizations that you spoke about, it was Blue House Group. And Blue House Group and their founder and CEO, Ben Corrigan, whom I was speaking with yesterday in London.
You're pretty good friends, right?
We're best mates in so many ways. Yeah. And if we go it's clearly more than work, but my first opportunity to do corporate coaching was with Ben Corrigan and Blue House Group, and it's something that I feel really proud of, and how that's cascaded out, and the creative organizations that I work with across this industry and deep and broad in this industry all across the world is something that I'm incredibly proud of. But it started with that piece at Blue House Group, and it started with a real focus on, tell me about this organization at its best. What does that look like, and what do we need to get from our people to be that, and how do we create leaders worth following? Work worth doing. So especially I think that work worth doing space is really prevalent in the industry we're in, around ESG and around neurodiversity that you and I have already been talking about, and the diversity and inclusion that is so important to inspire not only our employees, but to create great spaces for people to work in, and then a culture worth contributing to. So we now spend more time at work than at any other endeavor in our life. So it's the whole idea of work-life balance. It's
more of a blend, right?
It's much more about integration. And for me, it's about work-life progress. How do I keep moving in the shape of my life? Because my life keeps evolving. So to think that I'm trying to balance it, I just think it's an old idea. And so opening up new ideas for people, and this industry is something that an industry that I really love for that, because it constantly evolves. And I think about some of the extraordinary people I get to work with around the world in this industry, in this region, in the Middle East, and then globally, in the US, in the UK, in Europe, and of course in my native Australia. But the Middle East has been the place where I started with. So when I first started, so to go to your point again, when I first started, I got to this stage where I said, well, it's not the rugby I'm interested in, it's getting the best out of people. So I went and did a degree in psychology, organizational behavior, leadership agility, Gallup strengths, NLP, as you and I have discussed. And when I got all of these skills together, and then started looking at executive coaching and training, and I looked around the world for the place where the queue was shortest, because if you're going to join a queue, make sure it's a short one, and make sure when you get to the front of it, it was worth lining up. And so I saw Dubai, those amazingly over 20 years ago, as the place where the queue was shortest, the opportunity was biggest, and then you see this amazing...
I still feel the same about it now.
Right. Well, I probably feel more of it.
Oh, really?
This now, given a couple of the conversations I'm having because lots of the conversations I'm having now with organizations wanting to collaborate, wanting to come into this region. And understanding that the way to come into this region is through partnership, not to come in and just say, right, there's an opportunity here, we'll put a stake in the ground. No, like, how can we work with great people? And that's what I think I've opened up for people to do as well.
Coming back to your point on kind of work-life integration, because I think this is something that unites pretty much any audience that is listening to this podcast today, especially in Dubai. We tend to be a little bit workaholic, and in the interior design and architecture industry, very much so. I have a number of friends that the heads of their own practices that are working till like 1, 2 a.m. most weekdays, and they're working weekends as well. So there's a passion there, but we have to make sure that we're not burning out. And burnout is something that kind of drives me to help prevent. And I do that through helping organizations with their interior design and figuring out from that point of view. You do it with leadership, but how can we help change people's mindsets, or maybe put the right people in place so that they're not working themselves to the bone?
Yeah, so I think there's a great insight that can be found in the idea of robustness and resilience. So if you want to be really robust in the world, you've got to have a great plan. And if you want to be resilient, you have to build in recovery and redundancy into that plan. So for me, the thing is, and this is a strength-based idea, and people that are listening to this that work with me a lot will know that I'm about what does the best version of your organization look like, and how do we bring that to life? So for me, do you understand what a great week looks like?
Yeah.
And are you happening to the week, or is the week happening to you? And so how do we get an organization where people are regular and orderly enough in the way they live so that they can be fierce and creative in the way they work? So the idea, and I see it all the time, Ollie, and it's not just isolated to this industry, but there is a real prevalence in agency life.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of the projects, the deadlines, the expectations, is that we tend not to be as regular and orderly as we could be, and therefore we're not as fierce and creative as we should be.
Right.
And so if you can be regular and orderly in the way you live, you can be fierce and creative in the way you work. And so
I love that.
what is a great, Gustave Flaubert, great quote from Flaubert. And that piece around creating, so my big space with organizations is how can I create a space where you're regular and orderly so that the work you do is fierce and creative? Because I am a ferocious guy. People who work with me, and I know you know this, is the big piece about it's really challenging to work with me because no one's ever come to me and said, I'd like to be average. Can you help me?
Yeah.
The people I work with want to be the best in the world at what they do.
That requires a push.
And it does. And it requires us to understand too that if you're trying to live an extraordinary life with a set of rituals that are ordinary, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So how do you open up that recovery space and live your recovery with the same sort of intensity that you live your creative life? And that's never going to happen with I'm up at 1 a.m. every morning. Now, all of us, I'm not from Mars. All of us know there's times that we need to push the boat out.
Yeah.
But if the boat's constantly out, that's where the burnout happens. And that's where the ferocious creativity drops off. And I'm sure there'll be listeners out there thinking about times when, and you'll hear it all the time. I remember when I first started and I'd win a little project and we'd be going, and now we're winning massive projects. And I'm going, really?
Yeah.
Isn't there someone else that could do this? And we all suffer from that at times, but it means that we haven't integrated our life as effectively as we'd like to or should do.
And to continue with your analogy, I think that the rough seas make a better sailor, and ships aren't meant to be at dock all the time, but we have to come back and recharge and rejuvenate ourselves. I did a bit of research in the healthcare field a little while ago. And when we think of resilience, quite often we think of people who are really strong, but it's actually about being able to get that rest. And in healthcare practitioners, doctors, registered nurses, they don't give them that time and that opportunity. So it's got one of the leading burnout fields in the world is healthcare. And then, of course, number 3, I think it is, on the mortality rate. So it's heart attacks and all that sort of stuff. I think number 3 is actually medical errors and mistakes. So not getting enough rest and recuperating ourselves can have a really profound effect on society as well as our own family and our own selves.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that because that's the other piece of work that I do really creatively with these creative organizations is we set up what must be true. Because you spoke about the rough seas there, but Seneca once famously said, no wind is favorable if you don't know where it is you're sailing to. So to take the time and talk about what must be true for us as a business and where we're sailing to, then also energizes our people as well. So it's that element of setting up great weeks, but also great destinations for our organizations so that the work that people are doing, remember what it is, leaders worth following, work worth doing, and a culture that I feel like I want to contribute to, then creates a real momentum. And I'm seeing the impact of that.
Yeah.
because so many people just focus on the output, but forget that the output is driven by the input.
Yeah.
And when you understand, and when you especially look at our industry and recognize that our industry is the service industry. And so behavioral economics tell us about the connection we create between us and our employees and our employees and our clients, and recognizing the impact that has on the quality of work, the quality of the product, but also repeat work, referral work, the profitability of what we do, and seeing it all as one thing and creating an environment where that one thing can thrive. I think that's when you've got balance right. And that rarely comes if the boats are always out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you need to be able to, and those rituals are really important.
That's what I wanted to come back to, is the rituals, habits, and consistencies. So correct me if I'm wrong, these seem to be the hallmarks. So once you've got the direction, once you know which way the wind is going and you have an end point in mind, it's the rituals and the consistency that's going to help get you there. What are some of the rituals that your clients are using to help keep themselves focused on that destination?
Yeah, fantastic. It's a great question. And I think those rituals are, when I explain them to people, they're the strength-based behaviors.
Is this the Clifton Strengths, Gallup stuff?
Well, we use Clifton Strengths to help people understand it.
Yeah.
And we're all certified Gallup Strengths practitioners. I'm an advanced strengths practitioner through Gallup, and we love...
Can you just explain who Gallup are, just for...
Gallup are the worldwide organisation that focus on... Their initial focus is collecting data.
Yeah.
They used to be mainly a polling organisation, but now they've really got into the employee engagement space and unlocking strengths. And so the Gallup Strengths Finder was work that was created on the back of the psychologist Donald O. Clifton, who actually changed my life when I saw his statement when he said, what will happen when we start to think about what's right with people rather than fixating all the time on what's wrong with them. And it's a really difficult thing to think about what's right with people. And when I say that with great respect, because all of us have been born with a negativity bias. And if you want to understand the negativity bias, simply turn on the news. Because on the news, they're not telling you, wow, this amazing thing happened. They're talking about what's wrong.
Yeah, negativity sells.
Yeah, but it doesn't thrive. So the negativity bias, it doesn't take much cognitive energy for us to be negative. And why is that? Because from an evolutionary point of view, when we first walked out of the caves, understanding what might eat us was a really good survival technique, which is great. And it's still true today. You will survive if you know what is wrong, but you will never thrive by focusing on it. So how do we get people to a place where they thrive when they're focusing on what's right with them and what would the best version of them do now, which takes a little bit more energy and to do that. But when you get that focus right, you put people in a place where they can thrive. If you look at all of the thriving organizations in the world, they're focused on what's right and the opportunity, not what's wrong with them or the world or their people. What's right with them? How do I unlock the uniqueness in them in a way that they can go and have a dynamic impact on the world? One of the ways I explain this, Ollie, what's the number one selling flavour of ice cream in the world?
I'm going to go with vanilla.
Yeah, brilliant.
It's applicable to everything.
Brilliant. And you would be correct. Number two?
Chocolate chip.
Chocolate.
Yeah.
It's actually chocolate. What's the percentage difference in sales between number one and number two in the world, do you think? Percentage difference. Give me one percentage.
I'm going to go with 98%.
Higher.
99%.
Higher.
99 point.
Higher. 1,000%.
Right.
For every 10 vanilla sold around the world, one chocolate is.
Wow.
And so never ever confuse you at your best and even you at your second best, because we're talking about number one in the world and number two in the world here.
Yeah.
Don't think that that's close.
Mm-hmm.
You at your best is something that is unique and creates that sort of 10x multiplier power.
Yeah.
So when we talk about rituals, we talk about strength-based. What are the things that are going to get the very best out of you? Strength-based behaviors, practiced on purpose, so there's an intention and a plan, and positioned to enhance performance, engagement, and enjoyment in your life. So performance is about the delivery of your objectives.
Yeah.
Engagement's a really interesting thing. Let's do an activity. So if people are watching this, they'll get it. But raise your right hand as high as you can. Higher. Okay. Now you understand
the chair.
Now you understand. Now you understand engagement. What was my first instruction?
Raise your right hand
as high as you can.
Yeah.
And when I said higher,
you could go higher.
You found a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that's engagement. It's extra discretionary focused effort.
Okay.
And it changes the world. So you here, as soon as I said higher, you only went 5, maybe 15% higher.
Yeah.
But that is where all the Ollie magic is.
I love that.
And if you think about it, and if you think about it really clearly, if you think about all the stuff that you've done in your life where you've gone, Mick, I smashed it, it was amazing. It was always about that. It was always about the extra discretionary effort. Turns out most of the magic in the world happens in the last 10%. You've got to do your job, which is this. But the engagement part, that extra discretionary effort. And what's interesting, how much more impact percentage-wise, this is another Gallup statistic, does Ollie create when he's engaged in that last 15%? So this is you here, and then this is this other version of you.
Yeah.
So you've stretched, what is it, 10%, maybe 15%? We've got language about it. I went the extra mile.
Yeah.
How much additional value in a percentage do you think you create for the 10% stretch?
Value in the context of profitability, productivity?
All of it.
Okay. 25.
250.
Wow.
You become 2.5 times yourself in terms of impact when you're engaged. Haven't you ever wondered why people do engagement surveys?
Yeah.
And why engagement surveys are so getting people and understanding how we engage people so important. And that's why rituals are important.
Yeah.
And around that, and then also the enjoyment piece, you know, there's great work from, and this is workplace as well. And this is such an important piece of life. For so long we thought, and this came out of the great work from Dr. Sean Acor at Harvard.
Oh, he's got a great book, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Happiness Advantage.
The Happiness Advantage.
Love that book.
Yeah, fantastic. So you will know this story about, for so long we thought that success was in the center of the universe and happiness revolved around it. So for so long we thought, let me go and be successful so I can, and then happiness will come along for the ride. And it turns out that that's completely ridiculous. It's the complete inverse.
Yeah.
No, let's go and create happy environments, and then success just orbits around that.
That's right.
And what we know about that is before there was language, there was laughter, and laughter meant I belong.
Yeah.
And I'm in my tribe, and I can create impact through that. And it's really interesting.
Goosebumps over here.
Yeah.
Like, it's incredibly impactful what you're saying. And I feel like you're speaking directly to me, but I hope the audience also get like a little bit of this Mick factor, I think, watching this session today.
And that's what we do, is we help people understand, get your input right, and then the output takes care of itself. Because if you're in the service profit chain, what you understand is the 3 things that correlate most positively are engaged employees. So how do I get these people at this extra discretionary effort focused on the experience that we're trying to create? client experience.
Yeah.
And when it comes to client experience, what we understand is that 75% of it is how they feel, 25% of it is what we do.
Yeah.
So the doing is an important foundation. So what we do for our clients really matters.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's the client, how clients feel. And you'll see this in the world, in the way that the world has evolved. We are now in the experience revolution. If you want to know what the evidence is, it's TikTok, it's Twitter, it's Instagram, it's, Facebook, all of these things that have evolved so people could share their experience, not what they were doing. So when you know that creating experience is important, and then the third one is profitability. So engaged employees are the lead indicator.
Mm-hmm.
Client experience is the driver. Profitability is the outcome. So I'll often go into organizations and the first thing they'll talk to me about is profit. And I'll say, great, let's go and focus on the things that drive that.
Yeah.
Rather than the
like
number.
Engaged and happy employees.
And great client experience.
Yeah.
And who provides the great client experience? That are
the employees,
engaged employees. And what we know is, especially in our industry, the industry we're talking to today, clients and employees are often best friends.
Yeah.
They're engaged in 2 to 3 year projects and they're deeply engaged around outcomes. So if they don't like their boss or their organization, the client will find out. So engaged employees isn't an organization problem. It turns out to be a client problem as well.
Yeah.
And then that turns out to be a profitability problem or a revenue problem. So
where are we now currently with engagement? Let's talk about global averages, and maybe we could chunk down into, the Middle East and North Africa, I think, is the data that Gallup cover.
Where we are is in the middle of an engagement crisis.
Yeah.
Is where we are. I think the global average at the moment is somewhere between 16 to 18. And post-pandemic, we've got a crisis of confidence with that as well. And I see some countries are down as low as 13.
Yeah, that's the UK, right?
In terms of what engagement looks like.
Yeah.
What engaged employees, those people going the extra mile. So our work has never been more prevalent.
Yeah.
Our work with people and understanding what great life looks like and great workplace looks like has never been more prevalent. When I say our work, I'm talking about the work that you and I share, Holly, but also the work that leaders do. Because at the end of the day, if you are leading an organization, your number one job, in fact, your only job, is getting the best out of your people.
Yeah.
And I had a really challenging conversation with one of the leaders in our industry this week, where their statement was, my job is to keep my people accountable. And I said, you're missing the point. Your job is to inspire your people, and then they'll keep themselves accountable in a dynamic and amazing way. But if you think your job is to keep your people accountable, you drop down and you're starting to push your people, they will resent it. Your clients will find out. And by the way, there's no one, to go back to our ship analogy, then there's no one steering the boat. It's dangerous. So how can we inspire our people more? And leaders worth following, work worth doing, and create a culture worth contributing to. And that piece about leadership, followship, and stewardship, having great stewards for your brands, is really important. And I'm seeing some extraordinary leaders do extraordinary things around that. I'm thinking about a couple of dynamic leaders like Shane Kelly out of TP Bennett, obviously Ben Corrigan, who keeps on investing in his people because he recognizes they're his greatest driver of brand as well. And there's so many people that we could talk about in that way.
Of course.
Julian Sharp, Lee Daimlo, Chris Testy, all of these fantastic leaders, Nick Hurst, Katia, Valentina, all of these people that I get to work with that are amazing. You know, and Valentina Vescovi, Valentina, if you're listening, I'm thinking of you and your mum at the moment. I hope her recovery keeps on going well. But she made that great comment that connection creates commitment.
Yeah.
So the more connected, if you want your people to be more committed, make sure you get the connection right.
Yeah.
So I think that's important.
So I don't know whether you knew this, but I'm actually quite the geek when it comes to Gallup. Every time they publish that 3 to 4 year survey, for me, it's like Christmas Day. I can't wait to get my hands on it. And I'm so pleased that you don't really have to pay for it anymore. They're actually giving all of this content away for free. I think they need to get a little bit better about like marketing it, because it's predominantly just the material, and they do a couple of webinars, but they could do better on that front.
I think there's one thing that Gallup, I don't know if you've seen it, their At Work Summit in Omaha each year.
Right, okay.
It is brilliant, and it's available both online and live. They've gone back to the live version post-pandemic. It is brilliant. So they probably could do a bit better at
yeah, I mean, I had no idea.
The actual Gallup at Work, and that's the summit piece. And I know that Peter Turner and I are attending in 2023 in Omaha, and yeah, it's fantastic, the data that they collect.
Yeah,
that we get to use.
It's phenomenal. And obviously there was a new report that was released for 2023, but actually last year there was a regional report around the Middle East.
Yeah.
And it spoke specifically to this phenomenal jump in engagement in the UAE in particular. It jumped from, I believe it was 15% average engagement levels. So again, that's 85% of your employees not feeling engaged on average. And it jumped by 19%. So it was around like 33%, which made
world leading, yeah.
Yeah, it was comparable with America and Canada, which are the world leaders when it comes to engaged employees. It didn't give any reasons for why that was the case, but I'm thinking, being a resident here, like what's changed so dramatically in that time? Well, we've had a change to the working week. Okay, maybe that accounts for some percentage gains here and there for engagement. But the big one was in the public sector, wasn't it? Of course, we shifted to a 4.5-day work week. As a previous teacher yourself, my wife's in education. She moved to a 4.5-day work week, and of course, the government sectors did the same. So I'm thinking there's probably a correlation there. And Sharjah, they did a 4-day work week as well as one of those Emirates. So you can't say that there is, causation just because there's correlation. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case. But I think there is something to that. So imagine like the ramifications if we started to extend that to, the private sector as well, and what could potentially come out of that. Because we've seen some great data come out of Sharjah recently in terms of road traffic incidents reducing by 40%, emissions hand in hand with that, productivity increasing, profitability increasing. And then, of course, the UK, which is where you spend a phenomenal amount of time as well, they had the biggest 4-day working week experiment in the world that happened there. And I believe 92% of the companies that were in that are continuing with it even after that. So here's my question. Long way around to get to the question. Are you an advocate of the 4-day work week? Have you seen it like implemented in any of the clients that you're working with? I know No Grey Area were doing some interesting things around some of the packages that they offer in terms of allowing people to work remotely for a month of the year. And I know they're one of your clients as well.
Yeah, NGA, love the creativity, the fierceness and creativity that comes out of NGA. And Elliot and the team. It's a great question. I know that we've embraced it, but we talk a lot about discipline without rigidity.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've implemented is saying, you know what, we don't really mind where you are to work, or it's about your deliverables, and it's about us staying connected. And I've seen some interesting pieces. My big part for it is having a set of discipline around it. So regular and orderly so you can be fierce and creative. So a couple of things that I'm seeing work really well are the anchor days. You know what? We've got these couple of anchor days where everybody comes in. Because one of the things that was coming out, especially with younger people in the creative sphere, was that they weren't getting enough time to witness the things that we all witnessed in our development, like a courageous conversation between the leader and a manager, or a phone call with a client that I could listen in on. Oh, wow, that's the way that we do it. And then those lunch and learn sessions and all of those things and there was a growing disconnect from culture. So what I've seen work really well is some anchor days, so that there was some discipline in it. And then the free flow of, right, these days, like I know a lot of organizations now that have are having a Monday anchor day where everyone comes in on
a tough day of the week to choose Monday.
yeah, but I think one of the things you need to ask yourself, if you want to know how good your culture is, ask the question, how do your people feel on Sunday night?
The fear.
Yeah, so if that's the case, what do we need to do differently? Because whereas I know when I asked that question in our organisation, people were excited because we've given them the discipline without the rigidity. But some organisations are doing it differently, Ollie. But I know some are doing it on Monday, because then they're setting their people up to be successful. They're giving them a criteria for success on Monday. Then they're having another anchor day on Thursday, so that Friday, Saturday, Sunday's got a greater flexibility for it. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, so they're creating flexibility in it. I have some organisations that are doing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office, and then Friday and Monday as work from home days.
Yeah.
And you'll see it is fascinating to be in London and see that Thursday is a really busy day, but then you walk around on Friday and it's a different vibe on Friday, because a lot of people are doing that differently. But what I think, I'm not a massive fan of saying this is the way it is.
Yeah.
But I am a massive fan of working with people to say, right, let's create a structure that lets people thrive. Because it can become really nebulous really quickly if it's just come whenever you want to come.
Yeah.
Because often it'll be, you can't then organise yourself around, right, here's a learning opportunity for a high potential. And how do people develop if they're not having that regular interaction?
Of course. I think as business owners, the idea of a 4-day work week is probably a luxury. I think we're more likely to be 7 days a week. But happily so. I don't mind working at any point in time. There's always ebbs and flows with these sorts of things, right? So you claw it back at other points in your life.
Yeah, and listen, I recognise the privilege of running my organisation. What I also know is there's always something to do. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean I always should be doing something, by the way.
Yeah.
Because there's always something to do doesn't mean I always need to be doing something. And making sure that our team understands what success looks like, and having regular rituals, because that's where we started with this, is around that. And to go back to your question, what are some of the rituals that I see working really well? It is the anchor day is a great ritual that's working really well for organisations. The one call a day, big shout out to Benny Corrigan, who's need to pay per mention, Ben, seriously, today, who has a ritual called the one call a day. Now, it's not the call you have to make, but it's the call you make just to reach out to someone, because no one ever wants to be that person who only ever calls when they need something. That's an awful place as a business to find yourself in.
Yeah.
If the only call you make to someone is because you need a payment or it's a need rather than reaching out to connect with people, then and Ben's one call a day, I think, is a great strategy around that. And he's got that across all of his leaders where they pick up the phone and ring a client, a supplier to see how are you getting on? Is everything going in the way? So that it makes people proactive. I also love some rituals in organizations I see where every email starts with further to our conversation, as per our call, all of it. So the focus is on understanding genuine connection around that. I love the social interactions that people are having. I love also the preparation activities that people are doing around preparing for a great week. Impact lists instead of to-do lists. I think we're human beings, not human doings. So I think the idea of a to-do list is an old idea that needs to be upgraded so that we're focused on the impact we're having. You will know this as well in the workplace. Since 2019, meetings have increased by 3 times. So we are now having 3 times the meetings. And the problem with that is a lot of them have become dump truck meetings. Do you know what a dump truck meeting is?
Yeah.
Where people are going,
shove power up,
backing up and then dumping information on people and driving off rather than creating impact for people. And one of the things that I think is really fascinating is if you talk to people, you ask them, when's your most productive time of the day? They'll say 10 p.m. And you always go, what are you talking? Well, it's the only time I'm not in a meeting. It's the time I've got time to think. And I think in organizations, we have to be really careful not just to have people back to back to back all the time, because then we end up creating a doing organization rather than an impactful one.
Yeah.
So I think there are a couple of ideas there, but let's stop and recap around them. First and foremost, as a leader in behavioral economics, doing great one-to-ones with your people moves the revenue needle more than anything else. So make sure you do a great one-to-one.
Beyond just the annual review, right?
Oh my God, I want to stab myself.
Yeah.
The annual review is a really great event, provided you've done great one-to-ones.
I've always found it demotivating myself.
But it's great if it's an ongoing conversation. And what's a great one-to-one look like? Tell me about the best day you've had at work this year. What made it a great day? What did you achieve? How can I help you have more of those days? That's a great one-to-one. It takes 15 minutes. And meaningful one-to-one interactions between leaders and managers and team are really important. So that would be the first one. Being really clear about your meeting structure and the impact you want to have with that meeting structure as aligned with your goals and objectives is another one in terms of ritual. Client connection creates commitment. How regularly are you connecting with your clients? And then creating a great week in your organization and knowing the flow of a great week for your people so that they feel engaged and feel like this is a culture I want to contribute to. So if you started there as an organization in thinking about the way you work, you can create impact that's dynamic around that. And then you've got people feeling like they want to go out like that. And suddenly on Sunday night, they say, God, I'm excited about the week.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I that should be everyone's objective. Because if you've got people going on Sunday night, oh my God, then you're doing something wrong.
Mick, I could talk to you for hours. You're an incredibly engaging speaker and very motivational for me and hopefully for the audience that's listening in today as well. Maybe you could think of a few final thoughts, but speaking to you and having gone through this process myself, I imagine you're the kind of guy that just having a coffee with someone would be enough to take them from that state of kind of complacency and comfort zone to kind of even starting their own business. Like, you seem to be the kind of person that can ignite that flame inside of people. So is there any final words that you could say to the audience that's listening in to maybe kind of kindle that flame inside people, or any final thoughts in general, really?
So if you wanted to do one thing for yourself, it would be, and you can do it through Gallup Strengths, or you can do it just by having a deep understanding for yourself. For me, it's the space between the notes that makes the music. Make sure you create enough space to be thinking about the best version of you and the best version of your organization. What do us at our best look like, and how do I open up the space so that we can be at our best more consistently? That would be the starting point for me. Is what's wrong with me is a terrible question, and you won't enjoy the answer, and there won't be any value out of the answer. What's right with me? What would the best version of me be doing now? Is a great question, and that's where all the value in life comes from. And when the high performance people I work with are spending their time thinking about what's right with me, how do I get into that flow? How do I create that type of impact? And I would like to think that that's what I do in this world. The next part, I would say, once you figure that out, then the regular and orderly, what are the rituals that will create momentum around that for me? And how can I be regular and orderly around those rituals so that my ferocity and my creativity can come to life? So one of the things that people will say to me is, where do you get your energy from? I invest in it. I understand what the best version of me looks like, and I make sure I'm regular and orderly around what it takes to bring that to life. And the next part, I think, as well is community, not network. Find people who want you to be successful and will cheerlead for you. Last weekend at Raw Cafe just down the road here, I got together with 25 leaders and just got people together, and it's challenging. Life's challenging, work's challenging. So creating a space for people to breathe out and say, God, I'm not alone, and to lean into the challenge and then talk about their challenges and then bring their best selves to it, and to walk away energized. And the difference between a network and a community, a network is transactional.
Yeah.
Here's a card. What can you do for me? A community thinks win-win. It cheerleads, it supports, it offers support, it creates momentum. So go out and find a community that you can join, because when you're in community as well, and that's where my organization is really about. It's not about thinking about transactions. I'm well past that. We're thinking about creating a global community of high performance people who are there to create win-wins in this world.
Phenomenal closing words, sir. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, my pleasure, Ollie. I think we covered about one of the topics we thought we would, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And then we went down different paths, but that is a little bit my way.
Yes,
to be honest.
and mine.
Yeah.
Thank you for following me down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, thanks a million.
Have a great day, sir.
I will do.